Evolution is a big part of nature. Our personality, our collective understanding of the world, and even life itself, they all evolve. Now, interestingly, language also evolves. English spoken today is wildly different from English 500 years ago, and so is any other languages. The thing is, there are many ways a language can evolve. They can adopt new vocabularies from a foreign language. A brand new word may pop into existence out of nowhere. Pronunciations can change. This can happen in many ways. It can happen randomly, or it can be driven by some external factors, one of which is how the language is written. Here, we are going to explore in what ways can the writing system of a language influence how it evolves, phonetically speaking. The phonetic change of a language can happen when a language adopts an entirely new writing system that has a different set of available phonetic sounds. There are certain words in Malay that has changed phonetically due to its transition between using the Jawi script into the Latin alphabet, or Rumi. Both of them has different sets of phonetic sounds. Take these words, for instance, rakyat, which means citizen, and iklan, or advertisement. The words were borrowed from Arabic, ra'yah, or ra'yat, and i'lan. When these words enter Malay vocabulary, they are pronounced rakyat and i'lan. Notice how the sound from ra'yat, i'lan becomes glottal stop, rakyat, i'lan, simply because it is kind of hard for Malay people to pronounce that sound correctly. Now, these two words, when spelt in Jawi, they retain their original Arabic spelling, but in Rumi, i.e. the Latin alphabet, they are spelt differently. Interestingly, the glottal stops are spelt using the letter K, which also represents the K sound. Because of this confusion, the words are now sometimes pronounced as rakyat or iklan, where the K sounds are now replacing the glottal stops. Let me say that again. Rakyat becomes rakyat, iklan becomes iklan. This clearly shows how the phonetic sound of a word can change solely due to the consequence of an adoption of a new writing system that has different phonetics. The phonetics of a language can also evolve differently depending on how its writing system works. Most writing systems around the world use some form of spelling to pronunciation correlation, where how a word is written corresponds to how it is pronounced. When you see the word laptop, for example, you know that L is pronounced L, A is pronounced A, P is pronounced P, and so on. And when you put them together, it becomes laptop, and you know what laptop means. But in very few languages, take Chinese, for example, it does not work that way. Chinese writing system uses what is called logograms. Each letter, or character should I say, has its own meaning. The spelling of a word does not always correspond to how the word is pronounced. This unique feature of the Chinese language has made its phonetic sounds undergone a radical change over the century. The phonetic sounds in the Old Chinese, which is spoken until the 3rd century BC, is widely different from the modern Standard Chinese, i.e. Mandarin. To put it into perspective, let's compare it with a language that has a relatively clear spelling to pronunciation correlation. The phonetic sounds of classical Latin, which is spoken until the 3rd century AD, has not changed as dramatically from its closest direct descendant, which is Italian. This shows how different writing systems can differently influence how the language evolves. Just now, we've seen how new sounds get introduced when Malay adopts a new writing system. Take note that adopting a new writing system can also erase some phonetic feature of a language. This has happened in the Korean language quite recently. Throughout the history, the Korean language has been using Chinese characters for writings. It is the only writing system available to them at the time. Not until the year 1443, when King Sejong the Great has created an entirely new alphabet for the Korean language called Hangul. Note that at the time when Hangul was created, Korean was a tonal language, but modern Korean is not. This might be in part due to how Hangul works when compared to Hanja, which is the Chinese character. Hanja is Chinese characters, which means that there is no clue given on how it should be pronounced, but Hangul is an alphabet. Similar to how the Latin alphabet works, each symbol represents one sound, which when put together produces the sound of a word. But it can be tricky for a tonal language. At first, a series of dots were used to represent tones, but over time it has been fallen out of use when the dots are seen as optional and that the reader would still know which tone to read when put into context. But this has led to an undesirable consequence, where the Korean language has lost its tonal value. To this day, Korean is not classified as a tonal language, and Hangul is written without any tonal markings or dots. This is one of the few examples of how a language's feature is erased in part due to a change in the writing systems. It is natural to think that writing systems only follow how a language is spoken, not the other way around. We write what we speak more than we speak what we write. But these are the proofs that writing systems has had a huge impact on how the phonetics of a language evolves. Most probably, it will continue to do so as long as language exists. Thank you.